This is the Waupaca Area School District Board of Education meeting.
Okay, thank you everyone for making time in your schedules to join us this evening. I will not steal any of the administrator's report other than to say thank you very much for your update this week. Not that we don't appreciate the other ones, but this was a very informative and in parts entertaining report, so thank you very much. With that, before we get started, this is going to be a little bit of a toss-up. I'm going to ask Mr. Larson to lead us in the pledge, and we'll see, since we have a couple, who is going to respond to the toss-up here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If we could open the door, please. Thank you. We will try to talk over any of the collateral noise from the commons area there, but as it is an open session, we do have to have the door open. With that, we'll start with roll call. Let the record reflect that Mr. Martin was not able to attend tonight, and I've not heard from Mr. Shambo. Did you hear anything from him? Okay, he may be coming in, but at this point, if the roll call would reflect those two are not present. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion?
Second.
And second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. We'll now move on to public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to address the board in any fashion? Okay. We'll then move on to item 6 on the agenda, approval of the minutes. We have 4 meetings that I'll entertain motions for. We should take them individually, please.
I move approval of the October 10th, 2017 board meeting minutes.
Motion to approve the October 10th board meeting minutes.
Second.
Second. Any discussion or corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we accept the October 19th special board meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion or corrections? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I'll make a motion, we accept the October 26th board hearing.
The budget hearing of October 26th, motion to approve.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion or corrections? All in favor?
Aye. And I'll make a motion for the November 9th special board meeting as well.
Any opposed on the October 26th? Thank you. We have a motion to approve the November 9th special board meeting minutes.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion or corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. We'll move on to communications. Mr. New.
Okay, we don't have any community partnerships to celebrate this month. We'll be bringing someone forward for the month of December. However, this is American Education Week, so all across the United States, public school systems and school boards are celebrating the fact that it is American Education Week. Today was the second day, and we celebrated by providing fresh hot sweet rolls for all of the staff members across the district, and that was compliments of the district as well as our new food service partner Chartwell's. On Friday this week, our staff will be engaged in a Flannel Friday fundraiser, where I have issued a challenge to all of our staff members. If they are so willing to wear flannel on Friday, I will donate $1 for every staff member who shows up in a building level picture.
In a picture?
In a picture.
If they aren't in the
There
picture,
must
they
be
don't.
proof.
Okay. All right.
And a number of other administrators and philanthropists have also indicated that they would match my contribution. So, as a note, the Terry Schultz, the
Chamber.
Chamber of Commerce, has also joined in the challenge, as Falk's Excavating, and so there's a number of others that are looking forward to the excuse to wear flannel on Friday.
Are you paying a buck for all of them
No.
too?
And where does the money go to again?
Oh, thank you for reminding me. So we used to have Waupaca Area United Way. And of course, everyone is familiar with United Way as an organization. And Waupaca had been fortunate enough to use the United Way brand for many years without paying any of the administrative costs associated with the name. And that came to an end this year. So they said basically either pay the administrative fees and comport with all of our auditing regulations, or you have to abandon the name. And because we are such a small chapter, we decided that we would try using the Waupaca Community Chest, which is really where all of the money has flowed in and out of for the last 35 years anyway. So that is the kickoff fundraiser for the Waupaca Area Community Chest. And the Community Chest, of course, supports organizations like Students Against Destructive Decisions and Project Backpack, the Red Cross. There are about 20 local 501c3s that benefit from these donations.
Awesome.
Yes.
Very good.
So moving on with the superintendent's report. The state report card data will be released on Tuesday, November 21st. The administration eagerly awaits the publication of the results, as we believe it will affirm the efforts of our staff. The district's new website went live on November 1st, and it is a wonderful reflection of the district. Congratulations to our technology staff who have been hard at work on this undertaking for about the last year, I think. It's been quite a project, so congratulations to Julie and your staff.
Let me interrupt. I have gotten comments from several people that they really like the design and the way they can navigate through it. Although there's a little learning curve with the navigation, but I've received a lot of positive comments.
Our principals and several of their staff members have been busy reflecting upon the work begun as part of the community conversation, #WaupacaWay2K30, during April of 2017. Staff members and administrators have been reviewing the core values and priorities identified by the community and embraced by the board. An update in this area will be forthcoming in December. And finally, the brochure that you have at your place this evening is a mechanism for promoting the district to potential community members. A survey of the local realtors during the fall of 2016 revealed a number of opportunities to tell the district story to potential home buyers. This brochure will be made available to our local realtors as they share all the positive attributes of living the Waupaca way. So that ends my report.
Very good. Thank you. We will move on.
Board monitoring.
Board monitoring, please.
Yes. If I may direct the board to the visual that is on the screen up there, I'm going to turn it over to our Directors of Teaching and Learning, Dr. Garth Larson, Mr. Eric Larson, and Mr. Don Smith.
So as a quick summary to our meeting we had last Thursday, we created this visual just to kind of wrap it all up, just to give just a quick summary overall. So you can see we call it it's our high reliability multi-tiered systems of support visual model. As you can see, there are four, with Waupaca at the very center of it, there are four main branches. The top one being the safe and collaborative culture, which, as we remember in our presentation the other day, we said that we have to really establish first having that solid foundation, that safe collaborative culture for both our students and our staff in order for us to be successful. And as we work our way around, then to the right, you see one of our next goals is to ensure that we have effective teaching in every single classroom. So then it doesn't matter potentially what teacher you would get. As we move into the guaranteed and viable curriculum, we really have, this is what the Waupaca education is, not what potential teacher would you get in terms of education. So as you can see then towards the left-hand side of the visual, we talk about our target-based assessment and grading reporting, which will get into how we're going to be linking what do we want our students to know, how do we want them, what do we want them to learn, and how do we know that they've learned it. We talked about that type of stuff at the meeting the other day, but then you can also see, kind of sprinkled around the outside, you have the engagement, collaboration, commitment, high achievement, and relationships on there. Those are all the other pieces that really kind of also fit in. So this is the kind of the model we're really going to use as we talk about professional development and initiatives here as we kind of move forward. What are we trying to do, and how does it align to what you see up there? And if it fits into one of those areas and it matches, then that's something we definitely know we want to continue to do and work on. But if it doesn't, then it's something we have to kind of really think about in terms of, is that helping keeping us go in the right direction? So a lot of times you hear that initiative fatigue or trying to do too many things. Well, for us, we really see it's really just those 4 big things that we're going to focus on over the next couple of years. So we can talk to our staff and say, what are the things we're focusing on? We're going to say it's just these things, and our goal is to get really good at just doing those things. Not try to have a list of 18 to 20 different things we're working on at once, but really those 4 things. And how can we get really good at those 4 things? So we know if we do that, our student achievement will continue to rise, continue to go up.
And one of our opportunities ahead then is also to help our staff understand how all 4 of those don't work in isolation, that they're all interconnected. And so part of the big opportunity for us as we're having this dialogue with the staff is to help make those connections for them, tying back to the presentation that Mr. Nian had shared earlier this year with making those connections. And so part of our goal is to make sure that we make it all make sense for them, because once they understand it, then we can begin to really put it in action.
Were there any follow-up questions that you guys have about this or our meeting just the other day?
Any questions? We had a pretty thorough overview. I don't know if they'd even considered an overview as such. Pretty in-depth review.
Maybe you still need more time to process from the other day.
Well, could you just remind us again, excuse me, the timeline that you're looking forward to in terms of some proposals that you're going to bring forward?
For your, we talked about potential proposals the other day of potentially the early release schedule will be coming forward.
Early release schedule, coaches, etc.
Early release, soon to be Dr. Nian. Do you want to touch on that one? What do you think?
That's good.
Yeah. I would foreshadow the proposals beginning to come to the board table in January. So when we talk about engagement, certainly the charter school is a perfect example of opportunities for students to become more engaged in the educational process. I think when we talk about collaboration, we're talking about the opportunity for professional development for our certified staff members, and also when we start to touch on some of those other 4 main areas, we are going to bring together a comprehensive plan, probably I would predict in January. So during the next 8 weeks, we're going to begin to involve other staff members. We're going to bring in some outside professionals. I met this afternoon with representatives from the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. Next week, we're meeting with some folks from the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. In a couple of weeks, we've got some folks coming from Discovery Education. And so we're beginning to develop really a full picture and menu of how all of these pieces, as our directors have just outlined, are really going to fit together. These aren't just isolated opportunities or incidents. These, as Garth and Don have mentioned, are really part of a larger plan.
Other questions at this point?
It's not that there aren't questions, it's just that they're so specific that there will probably be a better time to ask. For me, anyway.
So I did find humor that in the middle of our presentations, we have email from the DPI saying the report cards will be out on the 21st.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is student achievement, which is by and large the slide deck that you went through during that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that you wanted to highlight for purposes of this meeting?
No.
Okay. All right. Very good. We'll move on to item 8 on the agenda, which is school board, starting with reports on meetings attended. Does anyone have anything they would like to bring forward?
Yes, I will talk a little bit. I was at a conference representing the board and myself, obviously, at the WASP Legislative Advocacy Conference, which was in Stevens Point, not this Saturday or past Saturday, but a week ago on November 4th. And it was attended, quite a large attendance, I thought, in terms of numbers of school board members and administrators from primarily central and northern Wisconsin. A couple of legislators were invited in the afternoon. Luther Olson, who's the chair of the state Senate, the Senate Education Committee, and Joel Kitchens, who's also on that the Assembly Education Committee. They were there. But most of the discussion centered around the voucher program and the cost of education as it pertains to the political budgets and so forth. And there was a lot of really good information that was given to everybody in terms of where we are right now in terms of funding in this state as it pertains to education, and where casting forward where we might be. A lot of the talk centered around the voucher system, because in fact the voucher system as it's set up right now, and it takes a lot of the money away from education in general. And to bring that point out, and I don't want to talk any more than just to give you a couple of highlights, but right now we're spending $180 million directly to the voucher system. And even though we don't have a voucher program as per se in Waupaca, most of it's in Milwaukee County, Racine County, and Brown County, that doesn't mean that it doesn't affect us, because it comes right off the top. And projected in the future, the number of vouchers, which will continue to grow, that money will continue to grow in terms of what's taken away. And as a result of that, all of us will be affected and are being affected by the program. So a lot of discussion about that, how we can talk to our legislators about it. Again, remembering that the whole emphasis of the conference was to be advocates for public education. We are fiduciary agents of our district, our students, and so we should do everything within our power to try and maintain that we continue to get as much funding for our students in Waupaca as we can. A couple of real quick stats. In 2005, Wisconsin was ranked 13th in the country in per pupil average. In the last 12 years, we've dropped to 21st in the country in terms of per pupil average amounts, and it's projected to continue to slide in the next 5 to 10 years, just because of the amount of money that's being drained away. I mean, statistics, you can do a lot of things with them, but it sort of shows a trend that we have to try and, first of all, be aware of, and then hopefully we can try and reverse that trend, if possible, through legislation. Another kind of interesting point, one of the speakers that was there, a very interesting man, and I talked a little bit about this before the meeting to Greg, and that is Todd Berry, who's president of the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance. He's been that for the last 25 years, happens to be in his retirement year. You hear him oftentimes on the radio being quoted, because a lot of times when they talk about school funding and budgets of all kinds, or monies of all kinds in the state, he's oftentimes asked questions about that. So he gave a talk for about an hour. I found it really fascinating, because he did a lot more than talk about school funding. He talked about how school funding is really intertwined and related with our entire economic look in this state. So he had a handout, and he went through all the different trends, the demographics, the aging process, where people are moving to in this state, how the highway system has really aided, or in some cases hindered, communities. I mean, it was very interesting in how all of that is tied together. He made one statement I thought that all of us should be reminded of, and Greg maybe alluded to a little bit when he talked about real estate agents. He talked about a very long-term, extensive survey that was a 10-year survey with 650 cities across the United States, cities and villages. That's a lot of cities and villages, a lot of data over 10 years about their community and what it is that would attract people to their community. And the number one thing, 57% said their schools. So every time we talk about economics, and we have to always be reminded that school is a big way and a big reason for people being attracted to any community, not just ours, but any. That's the number one concern that came up over and over and over again. The second was employment. The third was natural resources of an environment and so forth. But schools, he kept reminding us of that in his talk, because he says every time I talk about things, whether it's school funding or economic concerns or money being spent for this, that, or the other thing, is you have to be, he reminded us that it always comes back to a good educational system if you really want to be successful. So he was fascinating, and I wish we all had the chance to listen to him, because I learned a lot from him. And anyway, I have lots of information here. I'll leave it with Greg if anybody here wants to look at it. In the long run, it's a kind of a dire prediction in terms of funding for education, because he reminded us that there are a lot of other elements in the budget in the future. And the number one, of course, you've all read about, is the Foxconn. Foxconn is going to take $400 million a year for the next 10 years right off the top. Okay. And then the voucher system in terms of education will take at least over $200 million next year, because it was $185 this year, over $200 million off the top. And then what's left over, we begin to talk about our budgets. Yeah. So if there isn't even a surplus to begin with, you know, we're looking at some sort of dire numbers. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. I don't know what we can do about it. We can keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. But that's the reality of where we are as we sit here today. And hopefully things will be good enough to pay all of our bills. But it is a kind of a dire situation right now for public education in the state, funding-wise. So.
Thank you. Any other meetings?
Sorry.
I just had a quick question for Pat. When you quoted the statistic, we were 13th in our spending, now we're 21st. Did they give you a sense of what the dollar spread?
Yeah, it's all in here. I mean, there's all kinds of numbers, in fact. But yeah, they have the national average, what it is right now, what Wisconsin average is right now, and we're below that. We used to be above that, but now we're below that, and that's when we dropped. We've gone from above average to below average. We're still ranked 21st, which means, of course, that there are more states below us than above us. But in this state, we've fallen pretty far, pretty fast.
When you say that, though, is that with regard to specifically state funding, or is that regard to total spending on students?
I believe it's through state funding. State funding has dropped.
Okay.
So, anyway, I'll leave all of these materials if anybody wants to look at them and wade through them. Be my guest.
Is the food good?
Okay.
Okay, any other reports on meetings attended? If not, we'll move on to school visits.
Well, I made a visit. I was scheduled to go to Chain, and I went to Chain. I went today and had a lovely visit. And I was supposed to do 4K last month too, so I was able to do a little 4K today, and the Chain schools. It's just a lovely school with a wonderful vibe, and the whole culture there is so up and happy, and the teachers are happy, and the students are happy. It was just lovely. One of the fun things that I saw is the music teacher, Mrs. Hatfield, is working very intently on the all-school musical Elflandia. And it's the first Thursday, I believe, in December, and all the students in the school, when I got there, the 4K students were rehearsing, and then when I left, the second graders were rehearsing. And they are so excited about this all-school musical that it really looks cute, lots of lines and costumes, and what a wonderful thing to put together. I had a nice chat with Mary Kay Risto about the charter school and how excited they are that that's coming down the pipeline in the future. And she was happy, she said yesterday, to go visit some charter schools. And I just think it's wonderful with her expertise and her wisdom and her experience at that school. I think she's going to be a wonderful resource as that goes forward. So we had a nice talk. Just the writing program, what is it called?
Lucy Calkins.
Lucy Calkins. Several of the classes were involved with that when I went in, and I made the mistake of, there was a little kindergartner that had illustrated his little book, and Mrs. Wolf said yes, and he's writing, you know, the narrative that goes with it, and I said, oh, and so he's just writing random letters, you know, kindergarten, whatever. She said, no, those are words. And she said, he could probably read that to you. And sure enough, it looked to me like letters. He had sounded out little words and was able to complete sentences. And I was pretty impressed that, you
4
know,
years old?
5,
Five.
just 5. But 2 months into school, or 2.5 months into school, it was pretty impressive. Having said that, I think it's frustrating to roll out a new program like that, whatever, and there's a learning curve. But all the teachers I talked to, hands down, said that they really see progress. And they really see how their student vocabulary has increased, how they're forming ideas, using similes, metaphors. So, you know, while there's growing pains, I think they really are able to see the benefits of the efforts. So it was a great visit. It was kind of short and sweet, but where's Rhonda? There she is. Great job. Oh, that's me. Yeah.
And I was supposed to visit the high school, which I did, or at least I think that's what the schedule told me to do. And I visited Chuck Peters, and he was involved with a couple of students with the GEDs, and we talked about that for quite a while. And it was quite interesting. Things have changed since I was in school. It was a very good visit.
Good. Anything else to report today?
And the musical. Got to see the musical. It was great.
Okay, very good. Upcoming meetings?
Upcoming meetings, that's my cue, right?
It was, but I could take it.
December 12th is our next regularly scheduled board meeting. We are attempting to schedule a policy meeting with the policy committee, so I would certainly appreciate any input as to whether or not the committee itself will suffice, or if the whole board would like to be present for the next policy committee. We do have about 30 to 35 policies that we're going to be bringing forward. So if you have thoughts on that, please let me know.
Okay. Very good. That takes us to the notice of school board election. With that, we have notification prepared that there will be an election for 3 positions, those being the incumbents Betty Mannion, Sandy Robinson, and Stephen Shambo. We have to have notice with regard to anyone that intends to continue by December.
I believe it's December 22nd.
December 22nd?
I believe so.
All right. We'll verify that and get that out. Okay.
It's not in the notice.
No, that's not in the notice.
Okay. And anyone wishing to run has to give notice by January 2nd. Okay. Any questions on that at this point? And that notice is going to be presented where?
It will be in the county post.
County Post? Do we know if it's in this week or is it?
No, it's published so that it comes out in the paper just prior to when they can start filing their papers.
Okay, very good. Okay. Next item on the agenda then is the designation of a deputy clerk for the election process or purpose. In the past, that designation has been given to Carol Beyer McCuskey. That's a board appointment or a president appointment.
Do we need to make a motion?
It would be best, yeah.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Carol as the deputy clerk for the election.
Second.
Motion and second. Any other nominations? Okay, we've got a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And we'll move on to the administrator section.
So I'm going to ask, I see Mr. Agebrek has left us, but I'm going to ask Lauren if you would please outline the request to have middle school soccer as a district-sponsored activity.
Sure.
So for the past 3 years, the soccer in the middle school has been played via a club program. The people who have been in charge of the club their students are aging out of the program and they no longer want to do the coaching process. So they're really hoping that we as a school can take under our wings. The program has grown substantially in the last 3 years as well. It started with 29 players, both boys and girls, grown to 37, and this year we're at 42. And that ended with 13 girls and 29 boys. So right now we're right on the cusp of having enough girls to have their own girls team, which would happen in the spring, but we're only asking at this point to have a team in the fall, 2 teams in the fall that are co-ed in nature. And so the co-ed teams then mostly play against boys teams. If the number of girls grows, then in the future we may have an additional girls team which will play only in the spring. So that's all written in the proposal. There are already a number of teams that we play against. We will continue to play against that same set of teams and go on the same schedule they're going right now. There has been a few transportation issues. If they request a bus and the bus is booked, they've been able to talk to the other teams and reschedule those on a night when there aren't bus conflicts, and we will be able to continue to do that. So the budget that we're looking at right now is around $8,700 for the first year, and that will include the coaches, the bus transportation, the refs, the gear, uniforms, and then the workers, the clock workers, the supervisors. The years thereafter will be around $6,700 because we won't need to purchase those uniforms new every year. So that'll be be put on the uniform rotation basis in the so the actual recommendation is to move approval to add middle school soccer as a district-sponsored extracurricular program.
And as of the last year, if I may ask, you did say that there were 42 students impacted.
That's right, yes.
What do you have any projections for the program continuing to grow as we've seen?
I haven't asked student interest, but every year it's growing by at least 5 kids. So.
Or do you have any coaches in mind at this point in time?
So I believe Polovitsky will still coach, and then it was Rush's son who was coaching as well.
James.
Yes, thank you. And I don't know if he's going to coach or not. I did not ask him, but it sounds like Polovitsky's on board to do that again. Thanks for asking.
Are
Yes.
co-ed teams at this age level common?
It doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of other co-ed teams they play against, but it sounds like the girls on our team are just as good as the boys, so I'm proud of them. And we've done really well, comparatively speaking, with all the other teams. Like we're a winning team. So.
So you've been playing co-ed already?
They have been playing co-ed the last 3 years. Yeah.
I can just add a little to that. I've seen a couple of the games this fall. Other teams don't have maybe as many girls as we do, but they may have 1 or 2. Obviously, they don't have a girls team, so they'll play. But it's mostly against boys. But there are some other girls on other teams.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll entertain entertain a motion.
So moved.
Move the approval of the middle school soccer as being a district-sponsored extracurricular program.
Yes.
Motion and second by Mr. Shambo. Any further discussion?
When we approve this, we're approving the dollars also.
Correct. Okay, other questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. All right, next item.
So the next two items are policy related. We recently discovered that our acceptable use policy and social media guidelines required some updating. And it's pretty straightforward. This is a clear departure from our previous acceptable use policy. But in today's day and age, with access to technology and all of the problems that can follow, we feel that the language in this new policy is warranted.
Everybody received a copy in advance of this meeting of code 367.1. Any questions or comments with regard to the proposed policy?
Mr. Dean, did this policy come from, was it recommended through another district? I mean, or where did the wordage come here?
Yes. So as you will recall, the district currently contracts with WASB for
Right.
draft policies. However, this policy language actually came from their competitor, from Neola. And the language from this policy was used by another larger central Wisconsin school district.
Okay. So we're not inventing the wheel here.
We are not. No. The language has been vetted, but it is not a WASB template policy.
But they have seen it and they accept it?
WASB has not.
They have not?
No.
Okay.
Julie has.
The entire cabinet was involved with vetting the language.
They were.
And it was also shared with the leadership team, yes.
Okay, other questions or input with regard to the proposed policy?
I'll make a motion, we accept the policy.
Second.
Motion to approve code 367.1 as written and presented with a second. Any further discussion?
Is there any reason why this is a sort of a standalone policy rather than we're going to have a policy committee with all the other policies coming up? That this couldn't have just been added in there?
Yes, there are reasons that it did get brought forward.
Because
And those
of the-
reasons
the
were related to
timeliness?
Timeliness, yes.
Just wondering.
Okay, there's a motion and second. Any other questions or discussion with regard to the code as presented? Roll call, voice vote.
The voice vote is.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Policy is adopted.
Similarly, you have the social media guidelines for staff, students, and community. One of the problems with rapid changes in science and technology is that it's hard for laws to stay current. The advances are sometimes way ahead of the laws. So the social media guidelines, Julie, I'm going to ask, did we have social media guidelines? So this is a new document for the district. However, these social media guidelines provide some level of expectation for not only our staff members who are using district technology, but also community members and parents, students, really anyone who comes into our buildings off the street and begins to use our infrastructure, our network, our Wi-Fi. These are the expectations and guidelines that we would hold true for them as well. So whether you're using a personal device or you're using a district device, these are the guidelines that we have and expect.
More specific to the section on social media guidelines for community, is that addressing largely community members that may post to our Facebook page as opposed to...
That is addressed.
I mean, that's what that section is really intended for as much as anything.
It addresses that, but also using our network.
Right. Okay.
And our former acceptable, or our former acceptable use policy had smaller sections devoted to the internet. There's nothing as comprehensive.
Correct.
Okay. Other questions on policy 367.1 R1?
I did think it was interesting, and I had to read it several times, the limits that we can impose on people for their personal use if they're employed in the district. And I suppose that's akin to the kinds of things, the limits that can be imposed on just other kinds of behaviors.
Yes, and I'll share with the board the same example that I shared at our leadership team meeting. Recently, there were a number of administrators gathered discussing current trends in technology, and they had a staff member who received a text message from a community member who came in off the street, jumped onto the district's Wi-Fi. This is not our scenario, by the way. This is another district. And sent an offensive message to a staff member. That staff member reported that offensive message, and that was the nexus to bring in that community member who happened to be a spouse of another employee, and it quickly turns into a quagmire where there is no good solution once you start diving into some of the issues that come along with technology. So,
Well, and I was referring more specifically to people who are employed within the district. that
oh, yes.
There can be limits by law
Yes,
for personal behaviors
absolutely.
outside of the district. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Greg, I'll ask the same question on this. Where was the vetting on this one done?
Same.
Same. Does our legal, like Mr. Macy, does he have a look at this prior to?
No, we
No.
do not use Mr. Macy to look at these.
Okay, only if it's called into question somewhere down the road. Okay.
Okay, before we have any further discussion, is there a motion?
Yes, I would move that we approve this Series 300 Instruction Code 367.1-R1 Social Media Guidelines for Staff, Students, and Community.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, okay, I'll entertain any further questions or discussion. Being none, I do have a question that is with regard to this policy, if adopted, how would we propose to roll out the guidelines for the students?
Well, that would be at the discretion of the principals.
Okay.
And we do have technology teachers, or computer teachers, librarians, and technology integration specialists in each building that have already been working with staff to a degree and would work with students on those.
And how would we roll it out for our staff members?
Staff meetings, a
Staff
very
meetings,
similar process.
Because there will be an impact to some of them, certainly, as to who they may have as quote-unquote friends on social media, et cetera. Looking at a few of those bullet points. Okay. All right, any other questions? There being none, there's a motion to approve the policy as written. And a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Policy is adopted, thank you.
The final item this evening under the administrator section is relative to handbook language updates. So the district created a teacher handbook along with support staff handbooks when Act 10 was passed, and that was implemented here in the school district. The recent budget bill has made changes to teacher licensure and has effectively eliminated the connection to college credit and coursework reimbursement. So as such, we needed to update sections of the teacher handbook, specifically section 16. And so what you have before you this evening is the current and proposed updates to section 16 under compensation.
Sorry.
This
Okay.
language,
Sure.
just one more quick comment. This language has been vetted not only with the cabinet. I'm not sure, I don't recall whether we shared it at leadership team meeting. However, it has been shared with a number of veteran staff members with no questions whatsoever.
Well, my concern here is this. I really don't have any problems with the proposal, but in terms of procedure, going back the last umpteen years, we generally have the compensation go through our personnel committee. I don't know that the personnel committee has had a chance to really look at this and made some recommendations or really gone through it point by point. I know there are some, there's nothing that I found difficult with this in terms of accepting, but maybe there are some other opportunities to have compensation in here as well that we haven't really even had a chance to talk about before we adopt this, because the personnel committee hasn't met where we could have our input.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so my apologies, I was not aware that the personnel committee had
Well, anytime we
vetted
had
the
changed to the
language.
salary structure or how we have compensated, it has always come through personnel committee.
Okay, and I was unaware of that.
And in my suggestion, if the personnel committee looked at this and found everything about it kosher and that we should adopt it, I would feel much more comfortable than me looking at it and Steve looking at it and none of us really talking about it prior to. That's my concern.
Would you like to make the motion that with this be moved to the personnel committee?
I would like to make that motion.
Okay, motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So we move to the personnel committee for evaluation.
That concludes the administrator portion of the agenda.
Okay, that moves us on to the consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second. Motion to approve consent agenda and second. And we'll take a roll call vote.
Pat Fair,
Aye.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
Steve Shambo,
Yes.
Sandy Robinson,
Yes.
Betty Mannion,
Yes.
Steve Johnson.
Yes.
I move adjournment into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85.1 parent C regarding professional staff employment.
Okay, there's a motion to move into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85 paren 1 paren C. Is there a second?
Yes.
Roll call?
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
Pat Fair,
Aye.
Sandy Robinson.
Yes.
Steve Shambo.
Yes.
Betty Mannion.
Yes.
Steve Johnson.
Yes. We will move into closed session. We'll take about a 3-minute break for